This is Genres and Subgenres Classifying Stories, Level 3. Let's review over genres and subgenres. Text can be separated into groups called genres and subgenres. So if we were to have our text that said banana, the genre would be that it's a food, and a subgenre would be more specific that it's a fruit. Another example, if we have Harry Potter, the book, Harry Potter is fiction, meaning fake, and the kind of fiction that it is fantasy. So genres. Fiction are creative or imaginative writing. Nonfiction writing that is writing that is true or factual. Folklore or folk tales are stories once passed down orally, and usually we'll say retold or adapted by. Dramas or plays or scripts. Poetry is writing concerned with the beauty of language. We will focus on the first three: fiction, nonfiction, and folklore or tale. So fiction subgenres. The subgenres of fiction are realistic fiction, science fiction, historical fiction, and fantasy. Realistic fiction stories could be true but aren't. Science fiction has aliens, advanced technology, or is set in the future. Historical fiction, a made-up story set around a real event or person from history. Fantasy has monsters, magic, or superpowers. Nonfiction subgenres. Nonfiction subgenres are informational writing, biography, autobiography, and persuasive writing. Informational writing provides facts or information. Autobiography is one's life story written by oneself. Biography is one's life story written by someone else, and persuasive writing is meant to influence the reader or convince them of something. Last are folklore subgenres or folktale subgenres are fable, tall tale, legend, myth, and fairy tale. Fables are short stories with talking animals and a moral. A moral is a lesson of the story, which is clearly stated. Myth has gods and goddesses, may account for the creation of something. Tall tale, the funny story set in the Wild West. Main characters or size or skill is greatly exaggerated, and the exaggeration is funny. Fairy tale has magic and or talking animals, and a legend is a story that might be true but is exaggerated. The exaggerated would be serious, not humorous. And remember that it's usually either retold by or adapted by someone. Fairy tales and fantasies. Both have monsters, magic, or talking animals, but what's the difference? Fairy tales are part of the oral tradition. Usually it will say retold by or adapted by. Fairy tales often start with once upon a time. So that would be like our Cinderella stories. Some tips for identifying. You need to find the main genre first, so nonfiction, fiction, or folktale. Then you can look for details in the text that reveal the subgenre. Does it have talking animals? Does it have magic? Does it have technology? Is it something that's true? Then, looking for those details, you can explain your answer by stating or using the details from the text. Okay, so we'll do the first one together. We're going to read the paragraph, identify what the subgenre is, and then you're going to pick the parts out of the passage that gave away your what subgenre it was. So number 1, The Lion and the Mouse, retold by Larry Laney. A lion was sleeping when a mouse woke him. The lion was about to eat him when the mouse said, "Let me go and I won't forget it. Who knows? Maybe I'll help you someday." The lion laughed so much at this idea that he let the mouse go. Some time later the lion was caught in a hunter's trap. The little mouse happened to pass by, and seeing the trapped lion, he gnawed through the ropes and freed him. Little friends can be a big help. Okay, so this passage is a fable. And we know it's a fable because 1, it says that it's retold by someone. Two, we have a mouse and a lion, animals, as our characters. They have personified characteristics, meaning that they can talk. And at the end, we have a moral to the story. Little friends can be a big help. So those details are what gave away our answer, and that would be our explanation for why we chose Fable. Go ahead and do 2 through 10 by yourself. Number 2, Brides of War by Gloria Malone. 1942, as World War II is raging, three young ladies fall in love with three very different soldiers. These odd couples wind up on a triple date off base one night. The seemingly romantic evening explodes into a situation that could make or break the Allied war effort. The Many Adventures of Robin Hood, adapted by Kirk Young. In this work, Young retells the many folk tales concerning the mythical Robin Hood, who may have been a real person. In these adventures, Robin Hood steals from the rich and gives to the poor in fascinatingly dashing ways. These tales have captured the imaginations of millions of delighted readers through the ages. Number 4, The Awesome Book of Sharks by Carrie Ann Powers. This book offers rare insights into the deep-sea lives of one of nature's deadliest yet most misunderstood killing machines. Learn where sharks live, what they eat, and how they bear their young. This book gives readers an up-close view of a shark's life. Escape from Space Base 8 by Mark Pound. The oxygen supplies on Space Base 8 are dwindling and the meteor's shield is running out of energy. Can Captain Kirk and his small crew of ragtag rebels retrieve the much-needed supplies from Space Base 7 before it's too late? Find out in this exciting space adventure. Number 6, On Short Time Personal Memoirs by Eric Arguello. Our world is not often built with short people in mind. In his collection of real-life stories, Mr. Arguello, a person whom by some measures is considered the smallest man in the world, tells the story of his trials and triumphs navigating through a world that was just not built for him. Pecos Bill by Sarah Mills. Mills retells the adventures of one of the most celebrated figures from the Wild West. Raised by a pack of coyotes, Bill goes on to become the toughest cowboy in the world, using a rattlesnake as a lasso, riding a mountain lion, and eating dynamite. You won't believe these stories. Number 8, Celestial Event by Michelle Walton. The story of May Puffin and her vampire love, Bob Sharp. The novel explores May's choice between her love for Bob and her friendship with Mummy Daniel Red, who harbors great feelings for May but is afraid to express himself because he believes the curse of the mummy extends to love life as well. Number 9, Perseus Kraken the Kraken, adapted by Saul Walkman. Perseus, the son of Zeus, is about to receive the ultimate test. To save his village, he must slay the snake-haired monster Medusa, who is so horrifying that looking at her will turn you into stone. Not only that, but somebody let out the Kraken, a giant monster from the sea. Can Perseus defeat the undefeatable and save his home? And 10, A History of the United States for People by Harold Zapp. Zapp tells the untold history of the United States by focusing on the unrepresented minority groups, women, Native Americans, and African Americans. Using rare documents from the deepest archives of American history, Zapp provides a wealth of interesting information and brings readers to some stunning conclusions. Okay, let's go over the answers. Number 2 was historical fiction. And it was historical fiction because it's based off of a real event in history, but it's not a real story. Number 3 was legend. And we know it's legend because it said it was adapted. It did tell us that it was some type of folk tale. It said that it was based off of a real person. Number 4 was informational. And it's informational because it tells us that it's giving information on the misunderstood but deadly sharks. Number 5 is science fiction. We know it's science fiction because it talks about a space base. It says that we have a space adventure, um, but it's still not a true story. Number 6 is autobiography. We know it's an autobiography because it's written about the person that it's about. Pecos Bill. Number 7 was a tall tale. We know it's a tall tale because it is about the Wild West. It talks about this tough cowboy and it over exaggerates character traits of this cowboy. And these exaggerated character traits are funny because you can't really lasso something with a rattlesnake, and you can't really ride a mountain lion, and you definitely can't eat dynamite. Number 8 was fantasy. We know it's fantasy because we have some magical elements, meaning a mummy and the vampire. Number 9 is a myth. We know it's a myth because 1, it says adapted. We have Perseus, the son of Zeus, which are Greek gods, and it talks about some gigantic evil monsters. Our last one is number 10. This one is also informational. And we know it's informational because it's talking about history, it's talking about real things that happened, and it even tells us that it gives us a wealth of interesting information. You could also possibly say that it's persuasive writing. And the reason why you can say that is because all those things plus it says that it brings readers to stunning conclusions. If we're bringing readers to stunning conclusions, meaning we're persuading or possibly persuading our readers, that means it could be persuasive.